People don't understand how connected everything is and how everything that happens and materializes on Earth, from volcanoes to solar flares to wildfires to economic distress, governmental change, everything is a reflection of the atmosphere of human collective consciousness. To hear that reminder that you have that power and that you know that you, in a sense, should pay more attention to where your mind wanders. So it inspires you towards self-mastery, and therefore you're happy and excited because you know that very intention, that very realization is going to help you master your life.
Because that's the other question that was coming up, is how to be fierce.
Well, you know that perfectly, otherwise you wouldn't have the question, so it's already burning within you, you're just holding back. So all you need to do, you don't need to cultivate that so much. What I would do if I were you is I would ask myself, hello everyone, welcome back to my reality TV show called Bentinho Life. How are you all? Good. So today, the floor is yours, more than ever before. And I'll start with some of the questions we already got that received a decent amount of upvotes from past sessions. With a few of the questions, I'll try to be brief. Normally, I'm quite lengthy in my explanations and give you a lot of nuances and angles and levels to consider things from, because I think this will teach you to see things more clearly and have less questions down the line that you can't answer yourself. But I will go through some of the questions in a more rapid fire way, and then I will pause at some of the questions and take a little bit more time to to deconstruct these, to do the nuanced approach. So some of this may not feel as cohesive because it'll be more rapid fire Q&A, but there will be a more cohesive guided portion as well in a little bit. Kuhn asked, is the seed in the causal body like the root of your main incarnational lesson those of Ra are talking about? Could we make that comparison? The seeds which lie in the causal body produce the need / desire for the births that you do have. So if you're planting seeds in actual physical soil, these seeds are there, these seeds exist, and they will sprout. The sprouting is caused by what's in the causal body. In this case, what's resting beneath the soil. What seeds are there? Seeds give rise to the sprouting. Sprouting gives rise to the further evolution and manifestation of what is all contained in that seed. So everything that you're seeing in your physical life, including your physical life itself, in terms of it being an incarnation, are the result of seed thoughts, seedlings, which reside predominantly in the causal level, for what that's worth. If this is a bit too technical and you're like, what is the causal body? Don't worry too much about it. But basically, roughly you could say it's the unconscious mind, which isn't inherently unconscious. It's just that we are not conscious of it. So we call it unconscious. But it's that deep level when you're in deep sleep, for instance. You're not conscious of anything, but the seeds are there. And those seeds will give rise to new ideas, to new thoughts, to new feelings, and also to new bodies. So your incarnation is the result of what you have been harboring, or what exists within you causally. I hope that answers your question. Is the seed in the causal body like the root of your main incarnational lesson? It's a bit more random than that. You have in the causal body, you have whatever you have accumulated through your experiences. It's not all intentional, but you're in process of making everything intentional, of becoming a master of yourself. To do that, you give birth to yourself. You incarnate. You give expression to those root concepts or those seed thoughts, those seed impressions, so that you can deal with them, you can work with them at a more conscious, tangible level, and you can increase your mastery of self. But a lot of these seed thoughts have been accumulated from a lot of random quasi-conscious lifetimes. So it's not like everything in your causal body is highly deliberate and intentional, and it's all about learning this specific lesson or having that particular intention. That can also exist there. The more conscious you are, the more unspirited you become as a being, the less automatic and random your recycling of life forms or your reincarnations will be. And so the work that you do in this life to become conscious of what drives me, what are those seed thoughts? Why do I have this body in the particular way that I have it? What is driving me? What is motivating me? What are the lessons that I need to learn? What are the seed thoughts that I'm trying to eliminate or dissolve? And what are the seed thoughts that I'm trying to bring to fruition more fully to help me balance out some other seed thoughts, some other imbalances, some distortions? So, in a sense, yes, but it's a bit more random than that. So the collection of seed thoughts that you have, they will choose a particular life that will allow you to then, with intentionality, with guidance from your higher self, to have a certain type of experience, to explore a certain theme of relationships, a theme of materialization, a theme of your life, of who you are, a theme of a sense of self. All of this, your interaction with that at a more manifest level, aka incarnation, gives you an opportunity to become more conscious of what caused all of that, what's choosing all of that, which seed thoughts, which beliefs, which impressions, which seeds underneath the soil of your mind, of your conscious mind, are giving rise to these manifestations, these lessons. Jasper, Nadua, and Rashma, and Marcel, how am I responsible for Australian forest fires? Please elaborate. Cute. So to those who don't understand the context for this question, a couple times in the past, I've blamed everyone listening to me for the forest fires in Australia and the horrid deaths of the koalas. As a reflection of the fact that you caused that. So it's just simple. You did. But you don't understand how. How am I responsible for Australian forest fires? Well, how are you not? This is not your planet. Is everything not a manifestation of you? If you get the depths of this, then you understand that you were responsible for that in some way, shape, or form to some degree. You didn't prevent it. You prioritized other things during your day-to-day life. Sloppy thinking, distracted thinking, blame-based thinking, accusational thinking, judgment-based thinking. All that accumulates in the ethers and will manifest itself as burning koala bears. That is your fault, directly, 100%. People don't understand how connected everything is and how Earth, everything that happens and materializes on Earth, from volcanoes to solar flares, to wildfires, to economic distress, to governmental change, everything, essentially, is a reflection of the atmosphere of human collective consciousness. So if you were not in a perfect state of alignment all the time, then you did contribute to the forest fires in Australia. It's plain and simple. It is physics. Some like to call it metaphysics because they can't see it. Doesn't mean it's not physics. It is physics. It is invisible physics. You contributed to the forest fires in Australia by sloppy thinking, by accusational, judgmental, misaligned thinking, by not praising and aligning yourself to source all the time. So, why do I use that example, or why have I used that example? Well, why do you think? What does it cause when you hear that? What does it bring up in you when you are being accused of being responsible for the forest fires in Australia or any other calamity? How does that make you feel? If it generates a big smile on your face, you get it. You get the message. Not because you're laughing at the forest fires in Australia, but because you're having the insight into the perfection, the connection of all things, and that you are indeed responsible for all things, and that no longer bothers you or stresses you out. It puts a smile on your face to hear that reminder that you have that power, and that you know that you, in a sense, should pay more attention to where your mind wanders. So it inspires you towards self-mastery. And therefore you're happy and excited because you know that very intention, that very realization is going to help you master your life. This harkens back on a previous conversation we've had about you cannot change what you do not own. You cannot master what you do not own. You cannot transcend what you do not acknowledge. And as we'll get into this a little bit later with another question that I saw about the discipline of the personality, you cannot really accept what you don't know is there. So we live in this oblivion that our thoughts don't really matter. And if you continue to live in that echo chamber, that void, that isolation chamber, that bubble of delusion, that you don't realize that your thoughts materialize, that your thoughts are added to the ethers, the atmosphere of this planet, and they come together with other thoughts of like vibration. And if there's enough mass to that electromagnetic shape of that particular type of thought that you're having, it will manifest. It will kill people. It will cause fires. It will do all these nasty things. And conversely, if there's enough holistic, sacred geometry type of patterns in your thoughts, deliberate, aligned, rooted in love and oneness, they will find companions in the atmosphere, in the ethers, in the electromagnetic subtle body of planet Earth, and that will gather mass just as well. And this will also manifest in beautiful ways on planet Earth. But to think that you are not responsible for those forest fires is foolish. It is folly. It is simply not true. You do contribute. You contribute all the time. And I like the way Abraham Hicks made this clear once when they said, if a brick would land on your face every time you had a negative thought, you would start paying attention. We live in this echo chamber of delusion that our thoughts don't matter, that they don't produce matter. that they don't materialize. But they do. They are matter. Thoughts are matter. They are shapes. They are symbols. They are intentions. They are vibrations. They're very real. Thoughts are just as real as anything else. I mean, ultimately, it's all unreal. Don't get me wrong. But as far as life goes, the sensible world, the things that you can experience and know and that appear, thoughts are just as real as the phone in my hand. So to think, to assume, and we often do because we don't see the evidence right away. And that's part of the struggle. If you take a physical action, if you slap yourself in the face, you feel it right away. So you stop slapping yourself in the face. But you slap yourself in the face all the time with your thinking, but you don't feel it right away, or you don't associate it with the thoughts. The results of the thoughts are often not associated with the thoughts that cause them. You don't make the connection. Oh, why is this happening to me? Because you're a sloppy thinker. Because you don't care about the next thought that bubbles up in your mind. You don't care to correct it. You don't care to align it. You don't care to impose your superior consciousness over the inferior consciousness of the human mind. You don't care to bring forth the power of I am and to shine with that presence through this flimsy fabric of mind, which without your I am presence, without your conscious deliberate presence, just does whatever the hell it wants, whatever it remembers from a past impression, whatever reaction it thinks it's best in that moment. And it goes completely unguided if you're not there to guide it. And then you wonder, why is this happening? Why is this not happening? Why is this happening? Why is this not happening? It's like slapping yourself in the face symbolically with a delay. You have a sloppy thought yesterday, and tomorrow something happens, and you don't make the connection that it's because of your sloppy thinking from the day before. This is, in a sense, the challenge of from subtle material to physical material, from the subtle realm to the physical realm. And again, deeper before the subtle body, there's the causal, right? So that's even less tangible, but yet it produces the subtle and the physical. So we need to generate more awareness. That's why I sometimes use those more radical examples, which they're not really radical because they're just observational fact. You contributed to the forest fires in Australia. There's nothing radical about that. It's just an observational fact of reality. It's just as radical as me saying you can walk from A to B and you have to place one foot in front of the other, or you can eat an apple, or you have to probably urinate today. Those are matter-of-fact observations, nothing radical about them. Why is it radical if I say that you are directly contributing to the forest fires in Australia back then? It's not radical. It's not accusational. It's observational. So once you get this, once you can see more clearly outside of your echo chamber of delusion, like, oh, my thoughts don't matter anyway. I have the right to be depressed. No, you don't. No, you don't. I have the right to judge myself. No, you don't. You bloody don't. Because every time you do, you cause some disaster for someone else on this planet. You're contributing to the destructive energy of this planet. So it's not just your right to feel how you feel. You see, because it's also not just your right to slap everyone else in the face, right? You wouldn't say that. So why do you do that with your sloppy thinking? Why do you slap everyone in the face with your sloppy thinking? Why do you contribute to negative catalysts all over this planet for your family, your friends, your neighbors, your children, your parents, and everyone you have never met that are also your friends? You just don't know it yet. Why would you smack them in the face with a hammer and call it your right? It's not your right to be sloppy. Once you see how connected this universe is, you understand your responsibility. With great power, which you have, you're just choosing to be oblivious to it, comes great responsibility, as Uncle Ben once said to Spider-Man. You get the point. We think, we assume it's a delusion, it's ignorance, it's obliviousness. We assume it's our right to be depressed, to be negative sometimes, to have a bad day. I'm not saying to judge yourself because that would be more negativity. I'm saying it's not your right to have a bad day. It's acceptable when it occurs, but I'm saying it's not your right to be depressed, because it's not just you that you're affecting by that choice. You're not in an echo chamber. You're in a connected world. The entire planet and beyond is your echo chamber. You are co-creators, co-shapers of the very fabric of reality. And it starts with the atmosphere of mind, of consciousness, your state of being. And if you're not there to control your mind, then who is? Who is responsible for that little bugger, huh? Who is responsible for the next thought that arises for you? And then there's this whole non-dual kind of false movement of like, yeah, but you don't have any free will. And it just arises, and they prove that the thought's already really there before you recognize it. There's no real free will. And so they hide behind that. But who is responsible for your next thought? And if you know that that thought influences the collective, the entirety of creation, then how could you say that it's your right to suffer unnecessarily, randomly, sloppily, because it only affects your body? It does not. Yes, you have the right to slap yourself in the face, because that only affects your body. But you know that it's not your right to slap other people in the face, unless you have perhaps a really, really good cause occasionally. But in general, you wouldn't say it's my right to slap other people in the face, because it's not my body. But metaphysically, everything is your body, and it's all connected. So the next time you think, oh, it's just me that's feeling like a victim, and that's perpetuating negative, sloppy thinking, and it's not taking charge of my life, my destiny, my purpose, my alignment, my desire to come from love, to know God, to know Source, think again. So yes, I'm increasing your burden here. I'm increasing your burden by a lot, by about 8 billion times. And I'm being generous, because that's not the full extent of what you affect in this universe, but at least it's a tangible example. Every thought you have, you're inflicting upon 8 billion human beings. Once you realize this, the sooner you realize this, and stop hiding from that responsibility, that full ownership of self, that complete acknowledgement of what is going on here. For as long as you ignore that, you will not master yourself. You will not find connection to God, not really, not deeply, not profoundly, not viscerally. And you will not be of service to others as much as you would like. So you got to see this like a quantum soup, right? Everything is connected, and you're responsible for every thought you have, because who else? Now, I'm not saying to give your thoughts significance, because they don't have any significance. What do I mean by this? When you have a thought and you give it significance, you're strapped to it. You're trapped in it. You're caught up in it. You can't do much with it. You're exacerbating it. If a negative thought arises, the way to deal with it responsibly is to acknowledge that it arises, and then to not give it any further significance to the best of your ability. To not attribute more negative meaning to it, because that's just more negative thought, and it continues to compound. And remember, you're infusing this planet with your vibrations all the time. Can't escape that fact. It's as a matter of fact as me drinking some coffee. So I hope this makes sense, and I hope this lands with a sense of love and honor and potential for your own liberation. This is not to beat you over the head even more. But sometimes raising the burden actually dissolves the burden. Either have no burden whatsoever in the way that you think, or carry a lot of burden because it dissolves all those tiny little sloppy burdens that don't put you on track. Does this make sense? You know, when you're carrying kind of half thoughts, half burdens, half responsibility, and you're suffering and you're kind of struggling and it feels like moving through mud, either let it all go, say, I'm not responsible for any of it, and free your vibration in that sense. Or take ownership, responsibility of all of it to a degree where you realize the impact that it has on the world, on yourself, and that there's nobody else to blame but you. When you do that, somehow it transcends this sort of choppy, muddy middle stage where you don't take any real mastery. You don't take charge. You don't correct yourself. You're just kind of in this complaining victim state where you don't want it and you don't want the discomfort and you don't want the ownership of it. But you're not changing it. You're not realigning yourself. You're not transcending it. So it's kind of an all or nothing game, my friends. Either disown everything or own everything. Become nothing or become everything. This is true in all endeavors. If you be nothing, it will go well. If you're all of it, it will go well. It's the in-between. It's the I am separate from the situation. I'm only partially responsible for it. That's the burden. But take on all the burden, and the burden disappears somehow. It makes room for liberation, for clear direction, for clear intent, for forgiveness, for healing, for wholeness. So that's why I use those examples that some people think are radical, which I think not radical at all. It's just observational. Ash asked, Milarepa said, my religion is not deceiving myself. Great. Belief in lack seems to be the biggest deception, but knowing this, we still resist change. Why and what to do? I said I was going to do rapid fire, but I just can't. It's not in my nature. So I'm going to take a few questions and I'm going to answer them in depth. My apologies for the false expectations created. And again, it's because there's no purpose in Q&A. Like you ask me a question and I say yes or no. There's hardly any purpose to that because it just reinforces the idea that you're the questioner and I'm the answerer. Whereas if I help you see how I see what I see, if I help you understand the nuances and help you get in touch with that so that every answer is more a guided meditation rather than a factual answer, then again, your need for questions will gradually disappear because your clarity will increase. You will know not what to think, but how to think or how to see, as they say. This quote is even simpler than the questioner perhaps assumes. It's more of a two-part question. My religion is not deceiving myself. That's super simple. That's something right now that you can activate. Simply stop deceiving yourself right now. What would that feel like if there was no deception, no self-deception going on whatsoever? If you were just pristine, clear consciousness, just knowing the essence of being here right now, with no particular imagination swaying you away from the present, and you're remaining clear, present, and undistracted. Another word for not deceiving myself is to remain undistracted. By what? Mostly thoughts, but it can be any appearance. Anything that appears is not you. Anything that arises in front of your consciousness cannot be what you are. What you are must be of a non-appearing nature, a non-arising nature, like the spacious background within which all appearances arise. if you can recognize this distinction between consciousness itself, or being itself, or space itself, that which doesn't appear to you, that which doesn't arise in front of you, that which doesn't have a shape or form or name or time span, that which is so effortlessly here hearing my voice, enabling you to hear my voice, making it possible for you to have thoughts and experiences, but which itself never becomes something in front of your vision. It can't. It's always this empty, spacious, beneficial background or space for all things to appear in. If you can remain undistracted by the appearances, naturally your consciousness will gravitate back out of the external projected world and settle into a recognition of its own clarity, of its own love, of its own nature. That's what it means to not deceive myself. My religion is not deceiving myself. That means to stay put as you are, to not entertain another thought, at least for the time of your willing practice. So it's quite simple. But we can talk about the belief in lack a little bit, because the questioner, Ash, says, belief in lack seems to be the biggest deception. And in a way, yes, it is. But knowing this, we still resist change. Why and what to do? That's more of a general question. Briefly on lack, if the universe is one, and if it has manifested itself out of its own infinite oneness, isn't that another definition of infinite abundance, infinity, infinite potential, infinite possibility? If literally everything that can exist does exist, and somehow it's all existing within a singleness, a unity, then doesn't that prove that everything is one? And that out of that oneness, there is no limitation. Because everything, literally everything, has been created out of it. Okay, if you get that, then get the next thing. Suffering is caused by believing in something that's not true. Suffering is caused by believing in something that's not true. In a unified infinite universe, where literally everything is made possible, the only thing that is not possible in infinity is lack. See if you get that too. In an infinite, limitless, infinite possibilities-based existence, the only thing that is not possible, even though all things are possible, but because all things are possible, the only thing that's not possible is lack. The only thing that cannot exist, that cannot be produced, is lack. Now, there can be an abundance of an absence of a thing. You can not produce a particular thing in a particular location. Speaking as God, God can not produce that nice Ferrari on your lawn or in your parking lot. God could not create a Ferrari on your parking lot. But that, there's no lack in that. That's a creation of the absence of a Ferrari on your parking lot. It's the abundance of no Ferrari on your parking lot. There is no actual mechanical lack, because all things are possible and there are no limitations in this infinite unified being. So then, if suffering equals believing in something that's not true, and the only thing that cannot possibly be made to exist is lack, and we have a collective of 8 billion people indoctrinated to see everything from the belief of lack, pretty much, you can see how that explains the state of our world, the state of our suffering. So we had to go, we were so creative, we were so rebellious and radical as our little independent selves, that we had to go and pick the only thing in infinite existence that cannot exist, and make that the cornerstone of our societal belief system? Riddle me that. We took literally the only thing that God cannot create, the only thing it cannot create, and we made that the sole focus point of our entire collective consciousness. Out of infinite things that can be produced, that can exist, everything that can exist, we chose the only thing that can't, and we developed a worldview around that. Now, if you understand that believing in something that cannot be, that is not true, causes suffering, it explains the suffering. So yes, one of the biggest deceptions on our civilization, in our civilization, is the belief in lack. Because you're literally believing in the only thing that cannot be. Knowing this, we still resist change. Why and what to do? Well, I don't think people really know this. When you're really clear on something, isn't it easy to change? Doesn't the change kind of follow naturally? Isn't change a consequence of clarity? Resistance only arises or is present. Let's say you're resisting some change. Is it really because you're clear on that change, or are you still unclear about it? And that's why you're resistant. For instance, you could still not be clear that that new choice is going to lead you to safety, protection, happiness, abundance. You might not know that super clearly, and so you resist a change. You want the change, but you don't trust it fully because you're not 100% clear on that reality. Hence, you resist it, you fear it. But when you're totally clear on what's the right, best, highest thing to do, is there any hesitation? If you're clear that it contains everything that you need, in those moments where you were absolutely clear that this sort of step into the unknown would take perfect care of you, was there any resistance to that change? Or was it an exciting flow down the water slide? So the resistance is not because we know this, it's because we don't know this. We don't recognize clearly how most of our thoughts come from a belief in lack, which is the Antichrist. It's the counter-God thought. It's literally the only thing that God can't create, and we're holding that against creation. Are aliens coming, like Bashar says? Most definitely. Be prepared. Hi, Bentinho. You sometimes refer to Bashar. Where does this voice, spirit, come from? Would you recommend listening to him? And if so, why and what for? Thank you, love. This particular consciousness is very pragmatic in its approach. That's why I appreciate it. I think they have very valuable, or he has very valuable practical advice, especially for going from a third density consciousness to a fourth density consciousness. So that next step for humanity of an expanded understanding, where people start to let go of their old belief systems, their old fears, and they begin to adopt a more unified perspective based in trust, following your excitement without any expectation or insistence upon what the outcome ought to be. He invites you into a free flow state where you trust yourself and naturally raise your frequency and join in this evolutionary transformation that's happening on planet Earth right now by raising your frequency, by acting on, trusting in your excitement to the best of your ability, moment to moment, like a breadcrumb trail, without necessarily jumping out of your skin or anything, but just in a trusting way, acting on your excitement to the best of your ability with no insistence upon what the outcome ought to be. Basically, the beginnings of living a life based in faith and free flow. And they've got many tools and techniques and nuances to this, but that's their essential, or that's his essential formula that he's offering humanity. So I would recommend listening to him if it resonates with you. Obviously, if it doesn't, then don't. But in general, I can recommend Bashar's stuff. Why and what for? Mostly, if you just want to get a little boost of expansion, you want to see things from a little broader perspective, a little bit more of a cosmic perspective, and you want to gain a little bit more courage in acting on your excitement and just going for it and not making such a big deal out of everything. That's kind of the vibration that he comes at it with. It's pragmatic, it's practical, it's a little bit just get over yourself, start trusting, live the life that you're meant to live, and raise your frequency in that way. So if that appeals to you, and Bentinho life does not suffice, then yes, I recommend Bashar. Hello, dear Bentinho. What is the most effective way to create a new self-identity? Many thanks. You got to create a new self-double. You got to create a new ghost image of yourself that is not your present self. So you tune in to your sense of God, your clearest sense of source, your highest sense of the highest reality, the highest state. And you ask yourself, if I had no limitations and if I had no commitments to my present self, what image, what concept, what sense of self would I prefer to have? How would I be? How would I feel? What would I do, in a sense? What would that look like? See it, feel it, be it. And then once you've created that image, you want to step into that double. You want to merge with that. You want to shift over into that so that that becomes your real body, that that becomes your real sense of identity. This is very simply put. There might be a process involved here of seeing what negative beliefs are keeping you bound to your present self. But at least you've created an image, a hologram of the version, a clear version that resonates with your soul, that you wish to be more than you want to be your current self-identity. So you're creating a new concept, essentially, but you're coloring it in, you're giving it visuals, you're giving it sensation, you're giving it purpose, you're giving it action, you're giving it interaction, you're giving it a full-bodied, 3-4-dimensional perspective, sense, feeling. Once you've created that double reality, that ghost-like reality, that body double, now you want to transfer into that. You want to assume that wardrobe instead of assume your present wardrobe. And then what might arise is your attachment to your present wardrobe. It's like, oh, that's exciting. I can see it. Oh, I can glimpse it. Oh, that would be so lovely. Yes, let me shift into it. But my daughter, or my pets, or I don't know if I'll be protected if I do, or I might be socially crucified if I do, or I might no longer fit in with my friends, family, surroundings. So the little hesitation, the little insistence there upon your present self shows, what is my commitment? What is my commitment to? And it's to some idea, usually based in lack, the ones that hold you back anyway. So you can see them more clearly once you've created this body double, this altered vision of yourself, and you begin to see it, feel it, be it, and migrate your consciousness to that. You know, almost like teleporting this physical body into that body double image that you've created. But then you can feel like, what's holding me back? What are my anchor points? And that's good, because that gives you greater precision into clarity of what you need to deal with, what you need to acknowledge and accept, forgive, and then let go of. And this brings me to one of the main conversations here that I want to have with you today. Let me find this question. Mehdi asked, can you explain what Ra means by the disciplines of personality? Do they mean things like the MBTI, Enneagram, astrology, etc., or something else? No, in fact, they mean quite the opposite of those things. Because a lot of these models are outsourcing, they're lacking in discipline. If you're reading your astrology chart every day because you want to project your fears and your hopes and your desires and your dreams onto that, and you want to find some artificial sense of synchronicity, what are you doing? Who are you? Who is in charge of you? Is it the stars? Who are you? Are you this physical body on a physical planet and the stars? Sure, there's an influence there, but what are you at the core? Are you not consciousness? Are you not I am? Are you not much greater than just thoughts and bodily perceptions? Why give your power away to astrology or the Enneagram? You can gain some insight from these models, but then are you using those insights to make the proper corrections and realignments? Or are you continuing to outsource source to these models, which is the opposite of the discipline of the personality that Ra talks about? So what is the discipline of the personality? I'll read you a brief quote that summarizes the heart of it from Ra's own words. The paramount work of any who have become consciously aware of the process of evolution. The heart of the discipline of the personality is threefold. 1, know yourself. 2, accept yourself. And 3, become the creator. The discipline of the personality results eventually in the whole knowledge of the self in micro and macrocosm, and it results in a finely tuned compassion and love which sees all things as love. So essentially, the discipline of the personality refers to any disciplined action, practice, or focus that helps you better know yourself, master yourself, gives you greater mastery over your thoughts and how you create your reality and how well you know yourself. And as Ra describes, the heart of it is threefold. 1 is know yourself. 2 is accept yourself. And then the third step is become the creator. Now, they explain also why it's in this order. And this comes back to what I've already shared with you guys in different words. In the context of doing work in the disciplines of the personality, in order to be of more full efficiency in the central acceptance of the self, it is first quite necessary to know the distortions of self which the entity is accepting. So in other words, if you don't own it, if you don't know what you're accepting, then sure, you can practice acceptance to an extent, but it will not be as powerful. You know, you probably know those people. Maybe you are one of them, no offense. But if you are, then it would be a great step now to become honest about that, no? To know yourself so you can accept yourself, forgive yourself, and transmute yourself into becoming the creator. But we all know these people that are sort of hanging out in an acceptance, like a positive acceptance. But they're very oblivious to their patterns. They're like a cartoon character on steroids. They're the same every day in a way. They'll tell you the same stories every day in a way. You know exactly what they're going to say next, how they're going to respond to your whatever stimulus you provide. And they're sort of above the clouds in their acceptance, but nothing really changes too much. You know those people? Maybe you are one of them. If so, welcome. This is your salvation right here, this talk. So what people like that are doing is not knowing what they have to accept because they don't want to acknowledge it. If you don't know your distortions, because sometimes this quote is misinterpreted, this quote by Ra. People think, oh, wait, I should know myself. That means that I'm kind of enlightened, that I know my pure consciousness. That's not what they mean, for the most part, although it will result in that. They mean know what is not yourself. By saying know yourself, they're actually saying know what is not yourself, the distortions, the wobbles in your mind, the things you've taken on. If you don't know those wobbles, of the self, or actually not self, but we could say self for simplicity's sake. If you don't know it, then what are you accepting? You're just accepting the familiar, and you're continuing in this sort of state of, oh, I'm accepting things, I'm accepting things, I'm accepting things. That is positive in a way. It can lead to transformation in a way, organically over time, but it's a slow process. At the end of the day, we want to know ourselves, own ourselves. Then, when we accept what we have owned, including the stuff we don't like to own, when we can accept that, now it's powerful. If you can accept the things you don't want to see, recognize, and own, now you've become a masterful being. Now you're on your way to becoming the creator, which will have a whole knowledge of itself and will be holistic in its direction of that self. And it will be disciplined in that sense. It will be in charge of itself. Usually we talk negatively of control, but do you not want to control yourself? When you're in a social setting, do you not physically control yourself? Again, do you go around, slap everyone in their faces? No, that wouldn't be appropriate. You know it wouldn't be appropriate. You know it's not your right. You know it would cause consequences that you don't prefer. Plus, it doesn't feel nice if you're service to others oriented, because why would you want to hurt another being, right? So you don't go around slapping people in the face when you're at a party. Unless it's a tortilla slap challenge. But then everyone agrees to being slapped in the face with a tortilla. That's a lot of fun. But we physically control ourselves, right? And that doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's different than repression or suppression, which is negative in nature, because it's not accepting of the self. Whatever you suppress and repress, or not even want to look at, not even want to go to, ultimately, and it's okay to take your time with that, because some of these things are hurtful and painful, and you don't want to acknowledge that that's part of what you've chosen yet. So, okay, take your time, but also don't take too much time, because you are causing forest fires in Australia. So take your time, but don't take too much time, because this life is precious, your life is precious, and this is a precious opportunity, so use it preciously, my precious. Now, to know yourself, you need to acknowledge yourself. You need to know what you are accepting. So you need to open yourself up to everything. Be transparent to everything that can exist within you. We've already talked about this in one of the previous sessions, right? Accepting the darkness and not making that a negative. Treating the negativity within yourself with a positive, welcoming approach. Out of control, like you're not going to uncontrollably give in to your negative tendencies. That's not what acceptance does. Acceptance and control are actually, when they're properly understood, they're synonyms. To be in acceptance of yourself is to be in control of yourself. To be in non-acceptance of some part of yourself, or any part of the universe, really, to be in non-acceptance of it, to separate, to segregate, is to lose control of those parts. And now they will influence your life without your control, because you're like, oh, no, this is not me. I'm not in charge of this. I don't want to acknowledge this. So ownership, mastery, control is a beautiful thing. Discipline is a beautiful thing. There is no way that you will liberate yourself without correcting yourself, without disciplining yourself. There's no way. Sorry. You can float, you can be a spiritual person if you want for the rest of your life, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm trying to turn you into gods, living gods. Creators, become the creator, step 3. To do that, the prerequisite is know your bullshit and everything else that's not bullshit. But know all of it, acknowledge all of it, be unafraid of it, then bring the power of your acceptance to these things. Now, if you can do that, acceptance means something. It will put you back in charge. It will put you back in control. It will give you mastery of yourself. Make sense? You cannot change what you do not own. That's a Bashar quote, by the way. Like I said, he's very pragmatic. You cannot change what you do not own, period. It's simple, it's physics. So it's up to you what you want. There is no judgment in this. When we speak with urgency, any of your teachers, when we speak with urgency, it's a sign that it's a good teacher. And I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but there's a lot of teachers out there that will not generate any sense of urgency in you ever. Some of these are genuine, but for the most part, they're just weak teachers that haven't fully gone through that cycle yet. And that's okay. Doesn't mean they can't provide some value. But if you're hearing someone that's genuinely passionate about your well-being and they're putting a little bit of pressure on you, they're raising your bar a little bit, they're trying to wake you up, snap you out, speed things up for you. For me, that's a sign of love, compassion, and some degree at least of courage or fearlessness on the part of whoever is communicating that to you. Even if they're not officially known as a teacher, it might be your partner. So some of this pressure is good because we got to own this stuff if we want to change it fast. And there's nothing more painful than leaving each other in this complacent state of let's just be nice to each other and never grow up. Well, then what's going to change? Next time, the fire will be in your backyard, not in Australia. So do not be afraid of all of yourself, any of yourself, because it's not you. Because it's not really you, you can accept that it is part of what you can be. It's part of the palette of yourself. And that's when acceptance will make a difference. That's when it will change you. That's when it will correct you. That's when it will realign you to be a closer representation of Source. You've mentioned that confusion was perpetuated by evil forces. Could you elaborate on these evil forces and what to do when encountering these in the world? Well, you're encountering them all the time in a sense. Doesn't mean that all day long they're hovering around you and they're manifest like that. But you got to understand that the negative frequencies ultimately, symbolically, but there is some reality to this, are demonic in nature. Every negative thought you've ever had about yourself has, at some point back in time, if you trace it back, has been inspired by those who have explored the dark side and made that their home. We wouldn't have the inspiration if it wasn't for our predecessors in those demonic realms, if you will. So everything down the line that is a consequence of these negativities, and even every single little negative thought that you have today, ultimately, it's not native to your soul. It's not really, truly coming from you. Now, don't get this mixed up. We do want to acknowledge it, that it is there. But it doesn't mean we say, this is who I am, right? To own something doesn't mean this is what I am. And that's why we fear owning things or acknowledging things, because we think, if I acknowledge this thing within myself, if I own this thing within myself, then I'm binding myself to it. I'm saying that this is who I am. But the opposite is true. If you say, I don't want to see this thing within myself, because if I do, I will bind myself to it, what you're effectively doing is you're binding yourself to it. Plus, you're hiding it in a closet where you can't ever change it or be fully aware of it, the consequences that it's infusing your life with. It's painting on the canvas of your life all the time. But because you've disowned it, you can't control it, you can't change it. So we need to own it, but be very clear on this. Becoming willing to see those aspects doesn't mean that they are you. Okay? So you can own something while at the same time seeing it's not you. In fact, that is the acceptance process. That is the healing process. Then they just slide off of you. But we do have to own that they're present. And then we can understand their nature. And we also have to acknowledge where we have indulged in it. We can't just say, well, okay, these things exist, but they're not me. And I've never been guilty of that. I've never indulged in it. I've never been tempted by those thoughts. I've never believed in those thoughts, or they never were mine. If there's still that sort of self-defensiveness in it, then we're still not accepting it. We're still afraid of it. We're still kind of pushing it away. We're sort of looking at it. We're sort of acknowledging it, but it's like a half-assed excuse. You know, when someone apologizes, but it's really half-assed, and somewhere at the end of their sentence, they still kind of blame you for it. That's a half-assed apology. right? They're very annoying. It starts out so well, like, oh, I want to say something to you. Yeah, I realized I'm sorry for when this happened and because you did this and this, and that therefore I had this response and I felt kind of out of control because you did this and this. So I want to apologize for that. That's a sucky half-assed. There's no wholeness in that. There's no forgiveness in that. There's no ownership in that, right? So it's the same within yourself. To forgive yourself completely, to apologize to yourself as a whole being, and to the planet for having contributed to all the forest fires and all that stuff, to come clean, to repent, to atone, to cleanse yourself. Be, without fear, available for whatever needs to be seen and acknowledged, knowing that it's not ultimately what you are. It cannot define you, except if you define it as you, and then you accept it. So you mentioned that confusion was perpetuated by evil forces. Well, yes, they prefer to cause confusion and negativity and disempowerment. And so these other beings, entities, just like yourself, but they're more deliberate in their negativity. They're not sloppy and random in their negativity. They have harnessed their negativity. They have made it their home. They've made it their skill set, right? They use that deliberately. And there's plenty of references in this throughout every culture, every society, every religion. Like, this is not some weird thing I'm making up right now. There are beings, they're human beings, but there are also other types of entities in existence that are not human beings that have honed skillfully, that have controlled themselves in the negative direction of conquering others in service to self. Now, they are gravely mistaken, and they are, in a sense, the children, even though they might be more masterful at using their minds and their consciousness than you are right now. They may be more in control of their energies and their psychic abilities than you are today. But in a sense, they are the children who are confused. Because at a certain level of progression through the evolutionary, the frequency ladder, if you will, built into this creation, the spiritual journey that we all ascend through, there comes a point quite near the end where all the polarity dissolves. It is unified. When this happens, those negative entities actually shift to a positive disposition. They get confused near the end of this threshold, if not sooner, but for sure at the end of this threshold. And no being has ever passed that threshold remaining negative, maintaining themselves in a negative state, in a service to self state. Because at some point, even their frequency gets so high, they're so in control, they're so deliberate and conscious at a certain point in the negative path, but still, they're still raising their frequency. And they reach a point at some point where the height of their frequency just makes it so clear to them that other selves, others, are also themselves. And then they get confused. They fall into a sort of an entropy and they need to shift their entire orientation. They need to forgive their negative orientation, realize it was childishness, and they come clean too. So in the end, the light always wins. This is actually true because the light is not the opposite of dark. It's the nature of what we call light and dark, both. At some point, instead of light and dark, it reaches a boiling point, a central point, a unification point, a threshold where they are realized to have one source. And if there's one source, then other selves are self. And therefore the distinction of service to self and service to others disappears, but the inclination to be of service to self over others, to like conquer others or to destroy others, can no longer survive. It can if you choose not to progress past that point. But at some point, all beings want to progress towards infinity. And so they will let go of their negative disposition. So you've already won the battle, even though they are more conscious than you are, some of them. Does that make sense? They're more deliberate than you are. They have streamlined, they've harnessed themselves more in a more focused fashion. Not all of them, but some of those beings. So even though they're more in control, and in a sense they have a higher frequency than you, you are wiser already in your light, in your service to others. So ultimately, do not fear it and do not condemn it, because they are also children of God. They are also yourself, and they're teachers. They're helping you find your way. They're helping you accelerate your clarity, your own choice. So evil exists, clearly. We see this in human beings, but I would say that most of even the quote-unquote evil human beings, they're indoctrinated and they're influenced by those more masterful shamans, if you will, cosmic shamans of the negative polarity. And so this acts like a broadcasting station of wickedness, of negativity, and whoever is susceptible to that, and we all are, as long as we have lack beliefs that we believe in, there are susceptibilities, then it's like we're tuning our body, our radio station, to those negative thoughts, and we kind of make them our own, and we internalize them, and we start believing this is what we think and what we feel and what we believe. So that's kind of how it works. It's like a radio station that's getting broadcasted all the time, but some are tuned into that frequency, others are not. And wherever you are susceptible to negative thinking. Have you ever had, especially probably in relationship to someone else, because they love to play it out, they exacerbate, they maximize they amplify the broadcasting when you're in a tricky dynamic with another person. So it's like they're trying to play sort of a puppet game. They find great joy in that. And they play into your susceptibility. So have you ever had the experience where you're in some kind of a relationship to someone and you suddenly don't recognize yourself, or you don't recognize them? Like almost like they've been possessed or taken over. And sometimes it can be actually to that degree. And I've experienced that myself, where it just completely changes. It's no longer who they are, or in some cases, maybe it's no longer who you are. So people come together, they in a sense love each other, or so they think, they hope, they believe, they strive for, but they have a lot of connecting weaknesses or lack beliefs that are playing themselves out with each other, that are mirroring each other, right? It's good. Essentially, that's how we grow. It's nice. It's mirroring. However, these susceptibilities can be played upon. They can be exacerbated. They can be taken to extremes. And when you have domestic violence and stuff like that, usually this is what happens. If they're normally quite decent people and suddenly there's this like domestic situation, typically it's being influenced by those frequencies. It's just that the weaknesses in each person, that's why it's important to control yourself, to know yourself, accept yourself, and become the creator, because that's the greatest protection against evil. But they will play upon our susceptibilities, and then they will, with our own agreement ultimately, but we're just kind of out of our league when it comes to that psychic influence. We don't understand what's happening. We're not able to recognize it and shield ourselves from it and discern from it, especially when we're in an emotional moment where it started maybe innocently, firing off with our partner on our lack beliefs and kind of arguing, and it got from worse to worse. And at some point, there's like this weird energy that comes over the whole situation, and you don't recognize yourself or you don't recognize your partner anymore. You're like, what is this? Who am I becoming? What am I saying? You kind of hear yourself, but it's like you're under a spell. You're in a bubble, and it feels very difficult to control because it's almost already too late. It's like, okay, you have to force yourself to get out of that situation, to get out of that energy field that has been generated. And usually when if this ever happens for you, I do recommend you change locations. Because if you stay too long in the same room, for instance, this can exacerbate when you're having a situation like that. But if you both go out and you start going for a walk in nature, for instance, it becomes more difficult for those sort of shamans to isolate the forces and to exacerbate that type of energy in the location, because everything is a vibrational coordinate, right? So if you move out of those coordinates, it's kind of like you're stepping out of their field and they will have more difficult time to sustain that kind of boiling pot situation. So anyway, a bit of a tangent, but you get the point. This is just one example of how our confusion is perpetuated by evil forces, or it's exacerbated. It's continuously offered to us. This is, again, why it's important to discipline ourselves, to get in control of ourselves. And you can't do this if you don't know your weaknesses, if you don't know yourself. But when you do, and then you infuse it with acceptance, it's like all that darkness integrates and turns into light, like a shield. And now you can no longer be preyed upon within those weaknesses. You can no longer fall for those weaknesses. And then you move on to like the even subtler weaknesses. Where can they still get you? And if you are a being of the light, and you are starting to sort of share and teach, you might get some more of that to deal with. So you get an opportunity to train yourself even more precisely, to see where are there still leaks in my boat? Where are there weaknesses here in my system, in my belief system? Where am I buying into lack? Did I believe I need this and I need this? That's how it usually shows up. The weaknesses show up in feeling that you need something, because that's where these types of energies can be plugged into you. That's where you can fall for these energies, these temptations, is where you believe you are in need of that thing. And that's all coming back to lack belief. So in a sense, the belief in lack is the original deception. And then there are forces that benefit from humanity staying small and disempowered, and they're playing on those heartstrings, on those weaknesses. Arturo asks, is there, according to you, a difference between trust and faith? If so, can you elaborate on that? And how can I/we experience this difference? Simply put, you could roughly say they're the same thing. For most purposes, just, if you're just throwing out a word there to cause someone to tune into a vibration, a frequency, both will work. But if you want to be technically precise, I would say trust is always in something, and faith is trust without an object, without an outcome, without a goal, for no reason other than faith. So faith is more, in its purest expression, faith is love for God, period. It's trust in God, period. Whereas I can trust that tomorrow I'll still be here, or that tomorrow I have enough money to feed myself and my family, or that tomorrow this goal is going to get closer to manifestation. I can trust in that or not trust in that. Or actually, let's use some of Bashar's nomenclature here and say that one of his statements is, there is no such thing as a lack of trust. You always 100% trust in something. So you can either trust in that it is working out, for instance, or you can trust that it's not going to be working out, but you cannot not trust that it's going to be working out. Again, there's no lack, right? There's always a positive, there's always something, an investment in something. You're always creating something. You're always 100% already creating your reality. It's just, what are you creating? What are you trusting in? So trust is in something, usually. But faith would be trust in source. It's like a free fall. It's like, I don't even care what happens. I just have faith. It's the highest expression of trust. And it is the gateway to love, liberation. Faith is the infinite path. Faith has no cause. It has no reason. It's causeless trust. It's not for yourself. You do it for God. You have faith for God, not for yourself. Trust, you do for yourself. Faith, you do because you're done living a life for yourself. You're done living separately. You're done buying into this dream. You want to wake up, and so you have faith. I could make that distinction. And usually, often, I use them interchangeably. But if I had to make a distinction, it would be that.
Massaro University is a vibrant online community dedicated to accelerating your awakening and activating your purpose for the benefit of all. Join live sessions with Bentinho and workshops led by experienced facilitators. Deepen your wisdom empowerment, and self-knowledge, and experience life-changing shifts week after week. At Massaro University, finding like-hearted seekers is easy and inevitable. Lifelong friendships and a shared purpose fuel profound personal and collective growth. Create your free account today at massaro.university and step into a community that's designed to elevate every aspect of your life.
Are there any life questions, meaning in person right now, about anything I just shared? If so, you can raise your digital hand icon. Tina?
Can you hear me? Hi.
Hello, Tina.
Hi, Bentinho. Great to talk to you. Happy. Didn't expect it because
Oh, nice.
because I thought my question would be not kind of, well, of course it's relevant. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here right now. So, okay, my question would be if something physically are happening to us, physical issue. To me, I broke my ankle 6 weeks ago with a lot of pain and surgery, and it was extremely unexpected. And my question, and I know I created that, and I just wanted to know, was it just, I mean, is that just because out of our thinking, out of the seats in our causal body, or is something more behind that? It's just balancing something out or growing experience. Yeah.
Beautiful. So, paradoxically, almost ironically, you broke your ankle to heal yourself, not the ankle, yourself. So, a lot of times, physical catalyst like that is actually a sign of, it's the first sign of healing ourselves, which is much more important because the physical body you don't take with you anyway. This is not who you are. You're an immortal, eternal being. This is just a temporary vacation. Who cares? You broke your ankle. Okay, it hurts. Okay, yes, it's unpleasant. Yes, but ultimately, it's helping you heal. It's helping you gain greater soul consciousness and greater balance as a soul. And evolution is what drives all of us. Going back to the one infinite creator, realizing the one infinite creator, that magnetic gravitational pull that makes us all seekers of infinite reality is what drives everything. So you broke your ankle to realize more of infinite reality, to balance yourself, to become more transparent and realized in infinite reality. So sometimes an illness is actually healing. First of all, I want to get that clear because we often demonize it, but an illness can be healing. It's healing the soul by making the body sick. Because what does that do? And here's, whenever something happens to any of you guys, physically of that nature, like you break a leg or you get sick or whatever, yes, it is coming from, it can be a variety, it can be of a variety of reasons or for a variety of reasons, sorry. But it's always some reflection, some manifestation, either of negative thoughts, but usually to show you what those negative thoughts are and to offer you an opportunity for, like I said, healing, for clarity. So our first response, ideally, is that we welcome the experience. For it still hurts, it's unpleasant, that's fine, you can acknowledge that. Like, I don't like the sensation, I don't like how this limits my movement. Okay, that's a human reaction, that's understandable. Just acknowledge that for a second, you know, that first like, shit, why is this happening? Like, oh, this is not good. Just give some space to that. Don't try to not have any of those thoughts. You can, if you want to. If you can truly stay with immediately, as soon as you bump your toe or break your ankle, if you immediately can see it for its benefit, that's great, but that takes practice. Usually most human minds will need a little venting process. A little, fuck, oh shit, why me? Or this is not good. What's gonna happen now? So accept the fact that you haven't trained yourself yet into complete faith just yet. Know that it's possible though. Strive for it. Gently strive for that. But accept that there is this little venting period. But then very quickly after, don't linger in that. Just give yourself space to react. And then, as soon as you can, without pushing anything away, holding, again, space holding, inclusivity. Don't be afraid of your reactions. Accept those reactions. Know yourself. But then you want to transmute that to, what is this perfect for? What is this guiding me towards? And with those kinds of reflections, like physical manifestations like that, usually the easiest way for the human brain to figure out what its purpose is, why it is showing up to this, to you, is to ask yourself the question, because of this catalyst, what am I now doing or inspired to do that I wouldn't be had I not gotten this reminder, this catalyst? So you want to see those two paths. Every physical catalyst like that is a fork in the road of your journey. It's offering you an opportunity to pause, and instead of going straight through like you were intending to and expecting yourself to, and you were maybe just on automatic pilot, it's pausing you and it's creating a fork in the road. It's creating opportunity. It's creating a choice point. It's creating a point of awareness so you can heal yourself and choose a better life. Choose a life that's more in alignment with what you actually want to learn and become and radiate and share with others, for instance. So, straight, breaking ankle, boom. Stop here right now. You can go left or you can go right. But you can't go straight through because you broke your ankle. But now it's a choice point. So this is the beauty, the spiritual beauty in those catalytic moments. And you want to be able to visualize, if you really want to understand why it happened, you want to be able to see both of the paths. One, what would have happened? What would I have chosen? How would I have felt? How conscious would I have been about myself? What version of myself would I be had this not happened? Was I to continue on that same stream, that same track, that same automatic pilot? And maybe you don't know exactly why, but you can at least try to contemplate it, tune into it. Was I kind of on a rampage that was going to lead me to some kind of a disaster? Was I not paying attention? Was I maybe not supposed to go on that trip? That ski trip? You know, something like that. And then begin to realize, okay, so, and what's the other path now? And usually over time that becomes clear. That's why in retrospect, people can see, oh, hey, I'm so grateful I broke my ankle that month. I didn't feel like it at the time. You know, this cliche kind of spiritual realization moment. Like, I didn't like it at the time, but now in retrospect, I can see that it was all good for something. So you, no offense, that's a good state, but you know, it's so cliche. People always realize it after the fact. So, but if you realize this is what happens all the time when you have a little calamity in your life, a little catalyst, a little pause moment that's being manifested, inserted, if you know this is how it works, then you can preemptively be okay with it. You don't have to resist it for 2 years before you are like, I can see its benefit, because that's an unnecessary struggle. And that's not what your beingness intends when it creates this. So what you want to be able to do is imagine yourself 3, 4, 5 years down the line, looking back upon this moment now with your ankle. And what then would you have said? Oh, I'm so grateful that happened because it caused me to be more aware of this. It helped me to change this. I didn't go there. I went here instead. I changed the direction in my life. So if you're finding a roadblock, a physical manifest roadblock that you can't do much about, or anything maybe even physically, it is literally you creating a fork in the road for yourself to help you, inspire you to change your direction. It's not a no to you, it's a no to the path you are on. It's a yes to you. Breaking your ankle is a big fucking confirming, affirming, divine, yes, you are worthy. And I love you so much, I don't want you to go down that path because I know you don't want to go down that path. So the ankle is not a no, you're unworthy, this is happening to you. It's a yes, this is happening for you. Please reconsider. I have to honor your free will. So I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I'm going to pause you right here. I'm going to let you ponder this and choose the better path. So it's love, it's a confirmation of your worth. Illness is healing. It's the process of healing. It's love. Now, don't create unnecessary illness because it's love. But when illness does happen, see it as love. Like see it as the process of healing your soul and helping you optimize your direction in life and make the most use of your time here. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I feel it. I mean, I felt it instantly right away. And because but I consciously slowed down everything, just everything. I cut down on everything. And and the interesting thing was, everything was working in my favor in this moment. It was so interesting. I mean, yeah. And I just went also into...
It always is.
Into trust, and I really let go in all these moments, and it was a lot of stuff came up and blah blah blah, but I feel, and it still do, that it's for my favor. Yeah, it's not pleasant. Like, but I see it. Yes, and accept it. Of
course. So there's beautiful, and there's another dimension to this. So first of all, great, and I recommend everyone develops this attitude. It's going to help you so much to maintain a positive interpretation of seemingly negative occurrences. It's so crucial because it only takes 1 weak moment of giving into a negative thought about something that's happening to spiral you into a 2-year-long depression where you're not quite connected to who you are. These things can cascade. They're tricky. They're risky. Negative thoughts are risky. And they're not ultimately coming from you. Again, they're meant to continue to disempower you. So it's so important that we develop this faith-based relationship, that whatever is happening in my life is there for my growth, for my healing, for my ascension, for my evolution. I want it. If we develop this relationship that we want whatever is happening to us, then it's very difficult to come up with negative associations if something happens. So then we can very quickly pivot to the positive perspective. And then, as Bashar says, since he seems to be a theme today, whenever you maintain a positive interpretation of what happens, even if the event might seem negative, or even if someone else intended it as a negative action against you, if you maintain a positive interpretation, a frame of reference, perspective of that situation, you can only get a positive effect out of it because it's your creation. Whatever you give to it, you're going to get out of it. So this is crucial in order to sustain the stability and the joyfulness with which we go through these challenging times sometimes. It's got to be an adventure. We got to be bigger than what's happening. We got to interpret it from a bigger perspective. And then this leads me to another dimension to this question, which is these negative occurrences will happen less and less the more aware you are prior to those mistaken routes that you were about to take on autopilot. So if you were fully aware of where you were headed in that state of consciousness, and you were sensitive enough to notice that ahead of time and make the shift yourself, you would not have broken your ankle.
Mm.
Most likely. There might be exceptions to that.
Yes.
Does this answer your question?
Yes, almost. There's just one thing. There's one side, because it was a really complicated fracture, blah, blah, blah. I got a surgery instantly and everything went well. But one side is extremely sensitive with a lot of pain, and it looks like it can go in a maybe not in a complicated direction. So I wonder how I deal with that. Is it the still ongoing questioning, aligning with source, with faith, letting go, feeling through the way?
Are you ready for a simpler
Yes,
life?
please. Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Are you ready for a purer, simpler way of being?
Yes.
Well, so then there's your symbolism. The ankle, which allows you to tread upon a path, a complicated fracture is showing you were headed in a complicated direction. And it's asking you, are you ready to, do you realize, first of all, the pain that comes with a complicated, fractured self? Fracture also represents segregation, compartmentalization.
Yes.
Instead of wholeness. So the complication of the fragmentation of self will lead to a complicated, fragmented life path. And you were blessed to be stopped in your tracks. And the very means that you need to traverse upon a path, which are your ankles, the most complex portion of that, have a complicated fracture that on one side, it hurts. It's sensitive. So there's still a side of you which is still, in a sense, perhaps resentful or hurting over or attached to that complication. And the other side is not. But if you can unify that, then the pain will disappear on both sides. But I think part of the question here is that, are you actually ready? Because it's challenging for a lot of people to choose a simple life, to choose the simpler path. So if you're ready for it, then take this reflection as, where am I still being complicated unnecessarily? Where am I attached to complication, to fragmentation? Where does it still seem daunting to me to embrace a very simple, clear, beautiful, streamlined path? I know I want that, because who doesn't in the end? But I feel like maybe I'm missing out on this, or I'm relinquishing responsibilities, or whatever it might be. But ask yourself, what attachment to complications do you have left? Are you ready to free fall in faith, simplicity? Because faith is the simplest path of all. It's the highest, but the simplest. Because faith literally reduces all the separations and complications into one thing: God. This whole complicated life of, I need to manage my life, I need to control my life, I need to control my destiny, make sure I get there, do it this way, on this timing. It's all replaced by the simplicity of faith. And you can't walk on your own. You see? You can only walk with God. You can't walk on your own two legs. This is how I would interpret the situation for myself if I were you.
I just love it. Beautiful. Yeah.
And you will know that you're on the right track. This is for everyone listening. When you're seeking for the interpretation, after you've accepted your initial human reaction and you're okay with that, but you're not lingering in it, then you're moving on to a more constructive dialogue with yourself. You could visualize it as your higher self if you wish. And then once you ponder, what is this? How is this not an obstacle? It's a redirection. It's a signpost. Go left instead. This is not the way for you to go. It's not a no, it's a yes for you, but it's trying to guide you in a different direction. It just needs to grab your attention because we're so stubborn and complicated. So then, when you start pondering, okay, what is this? What direction is this trying to inspire me into? And what do I need to let go of in my consciousness to gain that greater mastery, and in this case, maybe purity or simplicity and faith? And then you will know that you're onto the right, that you've got the message of the ankle fracture, or whatever the catalyst might be. You will know that you're onto the message, that you're actually opening God's email or envelope, and you're actually reading the proper letter that was intended in this catalyst, because you got out of your own negative thinking and you weren't stuck in, why is this happening to me? God damn it, I can do this, da, 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 da. Then you're not opening the envelope. You're not reading the letter from your higher self. But once you've given space to that, you are reading it. When you know you are reading the proper message, receiving it, is when you start to feel exactly what you were embodying there is, oh, I love it. This is so cool. I can see it. When you have that sense of clarity and the whole thing for that moment at least becomes obsolete, you're no longer resisting it. You're like, oh, of course, awesome. When you're lit up by what you're realizing, you know you've got the message. And that is the way to think and go and appreciate. And then you're healing yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, the fracture healed you. Nice.
Love it.
That's it.
I love it. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And with everything you just put for everyone. So I bet there's a lot of stuff in for each and everyone. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's a great question. Applies to everyone. Thank you, love. Caleb?
Hey,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am.
Even better. You one-upped me there. I was only good, but you are.
Right.
It's a great answer, though. And I'm often inclined to answer it that way, but then people will wonder, what am I talking about? So I just say I'm good. But I agree with I am.
Even just raising my hand, there was so much. I wanted to talk to you, but like the questions, I always want to ask a question, but the answer to the question always seems to kind of come through before I even ask, right? So like I kind of get the energetic. So I was more or less wanted to raise my hand and just get the confrontation of myself.
Well, here you are.
Here we are. Yeah. Would you say that the primary language, it's beyond English or articulation? There's a conversation, an energetic dynamic that's happening between the selves or the non-dualistic characters at all times.
Yes, and this is a near infinite spectrum. And you could say at the very top, the first language is love, because it's the substrate of everything. And then, as a sort of a general observation, I think of the holistic, proper spiritual understanding. I say proper, I don't mean that judgmentally, but the holistic, having a true understanding of the nature of evolution, of the spiritual journey, is a language. Because the way why I say that is, for instance, if you imagine that tomorrow all the ETs start landing here and make contact with us, and let's say, hallelujah, and let's say that Jesus returns.
Right.
And let's say that they come from higher dimensions where the vibration is very different. Their state of consciousness is much different than what we typically picture. How are you going to communicate with them? The primary way, the foundational way to communicate is to understand, right? If there's no understanding whatsoever to begin with, there is no real communication. There's just two jabbering vibrations. But I feel confident that if they were to land today, I would have an understanding with them, no matter what level they come from, with or without further communication of a specific nature. But the primary communication there is love. And then the secondary primary communication is that I understand the evolutionary nature of creation, and that these are just reflections of the same God, free agents on a journey at a different level of frequency. And just being as clear on that as I am, I feel like that is the dictionary of genuine vibrational communication. That's universal. between humans, between all species. So once you gain a genuine, proper, holistic spiritual understanding of creation of yourself, you will feel like you can communicate with objects, with ants, with animals, with humans, with ETs, with God itself. It is the bedrock of communication. It's spiritual understanding, having your eyes open, being awake to what actually is the nature and structure of this game. So to me, that's a language, a primary language.
It's like a singularity that the dreamscape or the non-dualistic self can't deny, even though that say they're unconscious. It's like something in them can feel that singularity, that no separation. Like,
right.
And you
Nice.
start to reabsorb so much source, as you would say, you reabsorb yourself. And that's really why I wanted to have this confrontation or conversation or this exchange. It's like you're me over there. And it's like they don't almost even really know how to respond, but you can feel everything. And then it's almost like, do you want to feel it, or do you want to just refocus on what you want, right?
Mm-hmm. Can you explain that? I can interpret that in many ways.
Yeah. So like every time any version of myself, any self, any reflection, let's just say a third density human moving into fourth density, just an average human, you're talking to them, you can feel so much energetic exchange happening. Who knows where they're really at, what they're really thinking, but you can feel such a different level of exchange, evolution. It's almost like it's like I'm out of the way, and my higher self is communicating with their higher self for the best outcome of us in the space, in the totality itself. And my job is not to interpret or try to understand or try to argue their point of view or their position, but rather get out of the way, be empty, embrace what needs to come through, balanced, imbalance, and let it merge.
Wonderful. So the primary component, the common denominator in everything you just said is essentially what we call love. It's a recognition of unity. And that is the bedrock of communication, understanding. So wonderful. And then you can still have the words. You can still confirm what they're saying, or you could even argue a little bit if it makes sense or if it's useful. But that's not really where you're oriented. It's not where you're coming from. It's not where your consciousness is anchored. So if you can stay in that love, in that unity, then sky's the limit in terms of the benefit you can cause for people, even the most close-minded people. You can brighten their day. You can dislodge some causal belief system just by your presence, just by being present to the love that underlies all of it.
Right. It's
Beautiful.
like they hate me and they love me and they don't even know at all at the same time they love to hate. It's like, it's crazy. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
One thing this makes sense to me. Let's see what you think. So basically, timeless, spaceless, the landscape, I've never been anywhere. And depending on where I'm at in my evolution and my soul's journey and the lessons I need to learn, what appears changes accordingly. So back to before, I thought I was a character on the screen in a location, believe I'm going this way or that way, or compounding or adding different concepts and this and that on that empty space. And it changes. Like, I've never been in Vermont. I'm not in the US. I'm not in Central America. It just perceivingly changes according to my vibration and where I'm supposed to be at that time.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
So that house that I grew up in, the street I grew up on, or my first visions of being in my bedroom, it's all here now. It's never not been and never will be at the same time. So like this whole thing, I think I'm in this place, but this will all just change because we hold the world before us according to my vibrational state, and my vibrational state changes according to my embracement and lessons that I may need to learn.
Mm-hmm. So technically you are correct. I am curious, if I were you and I wanted to take myself to the next level, I would ask myself, because you're obviously clear, intelligent, you're able to see things, hold them simultaneously, articulate them well, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love this. It's a great quality. And it can serve you well, but it can also be detriment or trip you up in an intellectual sense if you're not completely owning or aware of why you are seeking for that type of clarity. I'm not saying you shouldn't, because it's great to have clarity. It is what we all crave. But I wonder what motivates you to see the things you see in the way that you see them. What drives you towards that clarity, that understanding, that what is the motivation there, and what is it made of? And it's probably partially based on suffering, and for sure based in a seeking for the creator, a genuine seeking, no doubt about that. It's very strong in you. But maybe you can discern where it is motivated by suffering, because in those areas you might still be using this clarity to deny the plain and simple, or to deny some of the ordinary. Not saying you are doing this, but it's something, your particular signature, I've been exposed to it in other beings. It's a similar nature. And in them, what I've seen, take this or leave this. If it doesn't resonate, don't. And they're usually very, very brilliant and able to articulate, and they're great conversationalists about this. But there is an element of never-ending seeking in terms of words and clarity and clear perspectives and how it works, and almost like a technical sort of engineer or architect of trying to figure this thing out. And that clarity can both help, but if the entity is not aware of where that might be motivated from avoiding or escapism of a very simple, plain and simple lack belief, then one can go on for a long time. And yes, it adds some clarity to the soul, for sure, but it's unnecessarily long-winded, when the plain and simple approach would be, hey, wait a second, what do I fear most? Or what am I still in opposition to within myself as a human being? All the spiritual non-dual stuff aside for a second, I know that is real. I know technically I can plug into that. I can see that. I can thrive on that. I can sort of go there. I can transcend even if I want to. So that's there. I'm not just denying that. I'm not saying, hey, that's bad. It's great. And as a human being, within that illusion, within this feeling state, energetically, why do I even care about all that other stuff? Why do I care about non-duality? Other than the seeking impulse, which is genuine and inescapable. You have that. You can't deny that. You're on this slipstream to the creator, no question about it. But from a human mental intellectual level, is there a motivation there that's based in pain, in non-acceptance? And then I'm saying this to you because you could save yourself a lot of time and actually find more deepness and richness of what you're describing, if there indeed is such a wobble or such a distortion that is escaping a little bit in the clear seeing of things and putting things in perspective.
Right. From as long as I can remember, I just wanted to understand while I was here. Nothing made sense. So the quote unquote matrix or the way of the average human never made sense, never felt like I fit in fully, was constantly seeking for fulfillment in these smoke and mirrors of appearances that are arising. And yeah, completely motivated by pain and suffering. Of course, the dissolving or dissolution of the separate character back into the one unity of God. And like you said, it's like an infinite spectrum. And I'm reached a point where I'm like, all right, higher self, God's got me wherever I need to be for the most benefit. And it's already been accepted. There's nothing to accept. So to practice and make the most or transcend and alchemize whatever state or space that I'm currently in. And to stop seeking and to just be and feel myself and everything. You start to feel the birds, you start to feel the frequencies, you can feel thoughts, you can feel the texture in the snow, like you said, how it reflects or refracts, if it's matte or glossy, cold, hot. And then it's almost like even using that to trampoline yourself further into that unity of self, because you're even before the one that you think is experiencing it. And it's just so beautifully fucked.
And so, so none of that is inaccurate. However, is it fulfilling you on a virtually permanent basis?
No.
Okay, great. So then it's useless. Almost useless. All this brilliancy that you have accumulated, all these beautiful perspectives and teachings, if it does, it's not ultimately useless, but if it's not connected to, if it's not plugged into what brings you genuine well-being, then they can be distracting, which is what I sensed in the beginning. So if you want my, do you want my advice on this or my suggestion? Do you want peas?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Because it sounds like you're having a lot of fun. Being.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm. This will naturally exhaust itself. I'm just giving you a little glimpse of your own exhaustion at an underlying level, which clarity can resolve this, but you're being still a little too intellectual and linguistic about it. There's too many perspectives. So what I would recommend as a practice for you is surrender, not as a perspective, not as a statement, not as the words, but a surrender until all points of view, including the spiritual and non-dualistic ones, accurate as they may be, come to an end, to rest in the place beyond perspectives. And you may or may not be able to fully surrender to that all at once. This I will leave, obviously, up to you. But I want to remind you to consider this more frequently throughout your studies and meditations and beautiful contemplations, and they are beautiful. If I wasn't committed to your well-being, I would have praised you for everything you just said. I would have just left you in a feeling of agreement and perhaps somewhat egotistical empowerment, like, Caleb, you're awesome. Your mind is fucking brilliant. You see it all clearly. You've got the facts straight. Yes.
Come on.
But I'm not committed.
Infinite intelligence through. And the reason I love you, Ben, and your teachings, or what my higher self has brought forth, is you said it a long time ago, and it said, when you truly understand what I'm saying, you'll even give me back. So, like, who am I even before all these teachings? Before Bentinho Massaro came into my life 4 or 5 years ago, but you know, and it's like you give it all back. Yeah.
That's it. I love you, and I hope to give you a long hug one day. You deserve it.
I want to be up on the stage with you, supporting humanity. You know, like we're on the same team.
No doubt.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. And see what happens. Yeah. I feel like I gained this fearlessness. Like, you know, I'll step into a room and I want to go right to the front. I don't care, because there's no labels. There's no like positions. Like, who are you? Who am I? But there's this underlying benefit to serve the whole without the need to be better than somebody else, which is unbelievably empowering.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That can spark some people. So, all right.
Thanks, Caleb. Peace be with you.
Peace be with you. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too. JGB.
Hi. Hello. I'm sure about my
Hello.
video. Oh yeah, there it is. Can you hear me? Hi. Can you hear me?
It's very choppy. You're difficult to hear. I do hear you, but it's,
I guess it has to do with my internet connection. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm not sure.
sweet. Just try to speak as clearly as you can.
Okay. I got this thing going on for quite a while, and I feel like I should be able to solve it by now, but I still got the need or the desire to go one step ahead and pray, maybe get your support in this context.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, sometimes it seems like a pretty complex thing, but I hope the thing itself is pretty simple.
It always is.
Yes. So I'm not sure how much context makes sense to give, because I also don't want to give too much fearful or unhealthy mental clutter to everybody else who's inside
Sure.
of this direct.
Well, they will all raise their light right now, and they will be nothing but the light. So you're safe to proceed. I would say start with your question and then see how much context we actually need to understand your question.
So the way I put it sometimes right now in the chat is like, I got something going on in my energetic body, which seems to keep me from residing permanently or even probably for moments in the causal body awareness. As you said in past talks, it's like this is the point where all sense of location is gone. And always when I really stop thinking, still these energetic things in my energetic body give me a sense of location. And I'm unable to ignore them sufficiently.
Well, that's good. So essentially what's happening there is when you use this symbol, this permission slip of the causal body, right? So you take your consciousness kind of beyond the regular thinking mind, and you start to tune into that space. It makes sense. What you will find there, other than the space of it itself, but the contents within that space are like energetic packets of information. They're data points. They are points of view. They are the seeds underneath the soil. So don't expect to only be resting in the soil, like in the cool, dark earth of the causal body, but also you will find some of those seeds. So it only makes sense that what you're exposing your consciousness to, what you're tuning into, what you're becoming sensitive to when you do this, is those kind of seed thoughts. And they are a little bit like subatomic electromagnetic nebulae, energetic packages, if you will, of seed-like information. You know, like the seed contains the whole story. The seed contains the sprout, the tree, the fruits, and all the other seeds. So it's a condensed energetic perspective that contains a lot of data information. So this is not a negative. And you are not meant to necessarily ignore these things or be undistracted by them. They're coming up for you to realize their nature, which starts as knowing what they are, or even just feeling them, because they may not have words to them yet because they're at a seed level, but just energetic packages, just vibrations. And by shining the light of awareness on these energetic sensations, they will begin to unpack, unravel, relax themselves, And the light of awareness will bring balance and clarity and love and healing to these energetic packages. So first of all, because you also wrote it here, when I enter the causal body awareness, I keep being distracted by what seems to me energetic patterns that suck up my attention. How to deal best with that? Well, don't demonize them. Welcome them, because that's part of what you want when you're going to work with the causal body. It's a direct path to see most deeply what your belief systems are. And at that level, they might just feel like energetic packages with not a lot of words or symbols yet. So rest your awareness as purely, lovingly, and acceptingly as you can onto the energetic sensations that arise, and you will find that they will unwind, they will unpack themselves, they will decharge themselves, at least the ones that you're ready to decharge. And as a result, you'll feel lighter, and you may or may not understand exactly what that belief is or was when you're dissolving it with awareness. But you don't always need to fully understand what it is. You could just also heal the energetic pattern by shining loving, accepting, pure awareness on it, accepting it, loving it to death, essentially. You can love it to death. You can love it to disillusion without really needing to know exactly what it meant and how it played itself out into your subtle and physical realms, and so on. So don't make them bad. Don't see them just as distractions. See them as relevant things that arise for you when you take your consciousness to a deeper, more restful level, and then they arise for you so that you can actually consciously let your love shine on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's kind of what I'm doing, like.
Good, that's good. So don't make that bad.
Yeah, a lot of time already. I'm kind of impatient. And I see there's a
Sure.
so slowly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you see, I've always been a very impatient person, not necessarily with other people, but with myself. And one thing I've learned out of that mentality or that disposition of impatience and perfectionism is that sometimes, one could argue almost all the time, the fastest path is the one where you slow down the most. Because if you keep sort of seeing them as distractions, yes, you can attain a glimpse of transcendence where you're beyond the causal body and you see that none of that is you, and that can greatly reorient you, and that can dissolve a lot of these thoughts as well, but usually not all of them. There's usually just some things that require some love, some healing, some attention, some understanding, some self-knowledge. So by taking your time and slowing down with even just one of these energetic patterns, the moment they arise, if you shine patiently, you're accepting, because impatience is just a sign of non-acceptance. And acceptance is the fastest path to become the creator. So you can't become the creator out of non-acceptance. Know yourself, then develop the platform of accepting yourself. And that platform will function like a trampoline from which you can then jump into becoming the creator or source or God. But if you don't have that trampoline, you're going to have glimpses of God beyond the trampoline, but it's generally not going to be sustainable. It's not going to become a natural, effortless state because you're still jumping around, being impatient, denying certain aspects of yourself, and just wanting to get to the highest. I admire the desire to go to the highest, and by all means, at the end of the line, at the end of the day, at the end of right now, all that really matters is the one. However, you are also on a relative journey, and there's a great benefit in taking some time to come to an acceptance of these energetic patterns, to shine your light on them, and to let them beautifully, in their own timing, melt into the fabric of love. then you will experience greater wholeness, and your causal body will become more transparent to the God body. And therefore, in your day-to-day life, also on the physical, subtle, and causal level, that light, that conviction in God, that faith, that freedom will just begin to shine through the causal, subtle, and physical bodies. Because you've spent a little bit of time dissolving those filters, or at least the ones that cause complications or wobbles. So, and in freediving, for instance, I used to do a bit of freediving a few years ago, which means you go down without oxygen tanks. And one of their slogans in freediving is, slow down to speed up. Because sometimes you'll be at whatever depth you'll be at, like 30, 40 meters maybe, and you start having the contractions, the urge to breathe. And then the tendency is to go and want to swim up. But that's the fastest way to burn your oxygen. And it's the surest way to pass out before you reach the surface. So then to remind yourself, wait a second, the best way to speed up here and to ensure success is to actually slow down. So you relax, you trust, you know you're not going to die, you're going to make it to the surface, and you just stick to your technique. Think of nothing, just be there, boom, boom. And before you know it, you're back up to the surface. So slow down to speed up. This is spiritually relevant as well. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh, you sound so peaceful.
Yeah, I kind of know all this already, but it still touches me the way.
Beautiful. This is healing. And healing always brings you closer to God and makes God more effortlessly part of your day-to-day consciousness. But if we deny ourselves, if we don't want to see certain things, if we're too impatient, then it's going to be a very choppy journey. We're going to have a lot of ups and downs, glimpses and depressions. If we want a more stable, faster trajectory in the long run, sometimes we need to slow down and acknowledge what is there and let it dissolve naturally.
Feels like I'm already so damn slow, but maybe it's just my personal perspective.
Say that again. Can you speak a little clearer into your microphone?
It feels already like so damn slow in context around me. But then, yeah, maybe it's still the way to go for me to slow down even more.
And the real transcendence is always in the present moment. So it's not a goal that you reach. So if you're being present with a process that feels a little slow, an energetic process, if you're being present with that, you're actually entering into a transcendental state, more so than if you're trying to move past it real fast to try to reach the transcendental state in the future. The transcendental state can only be accessed right now. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally.
So whether you're present with something physical, subtle, causal, or divine, at the end of the day, it's your presence that is the most divine. So if you bring that to whatever is going on, then it's no longer so important where you're at with your journey on a relative level, because you begin to bring that transcendence forth into every aspect of the one. Not just as an end goal, like a linear state that you want to accomplish behind or beyond everything. You're actually bringing that beyondness into whatever appears right here, and you attain a great transcendence through that practice very quickly.
Okay.
Does this help your query?
I guess so. I mean, I just keep doing what I'm already doing. I mean, I feel something has happened right now in this interaction for me, definitely.
Nice. I think so too. Yeah, I think you will find that After this conversation, this little confirmation that you received, the gestalt, the feeling of it will be different. It will be much freer, and you will see it less as this. You will see these energetic patterns less as distractions, and you will feel much more of that freedom and transcendence when they appear, because you've recontextualized it. You've made the negative positive. So you're going to be able to lovingly dissolve these things much faster, because sometimes they're just asking for a little bit of attention, acknowledgement, and consciousness. And if we're unwilling to give that to them, or we see them as distractions only, then it's usually a slower path, or it's a partial path. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of attention. Like an upset wife. Sometimes the causal body just needs a listening ear.
Okay. Yeah, thank you a lot. I guess this
Thank
is
you.
enough for me right now in this topic.
I think so. I think it will unfold. Give it some time.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, a lot more questions. So little time. What to do? We can't rush through all of them, as we just found out. And as I tried at the start of the session, we got to slow down to answer all our questions faster. So I will take one more question at this timing. And I don't quite see your name, Lila. I see an email address.
Can you hear me?
Yes. What's your name, love?
Lila.
Hi.
Hi. So, I have a similar experience to Caleb, where questions come up, but they seem to get answered almost very quickly. But I do have this persistent theme right now about being in service and feeling like I have no clue about that, where if I'm being in service or how I can be in service. After having an experience of working as a healer for a long time and getting burned out doing that. And then finding myself doing a job now that doesn't seem to have anything to do with being in service, but it feels right somehow. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to have more clarity around that, or if I just continue on faith and just wait and see what happens. That's my question.
Wonderful. Well, somebody who is not oriented towards service to others would never ask themselves this question. First of all, so this shows the nature of your orientation, your intention, and ultimately service to others, service to the whole, is an intention. What you do with that, not do with that, is secondary. So, and what it looks like is secondary. So you could stay in your current job or occupation, and as long as that feels right for your path intuitively, and you feel aligned there, and you're happy, like you're relatively happy at least, and you're in well-being, and you daily tune into this intention that you already have and possess, how can I be of service? Then you can bring that into whatever situation you are in, realizing that this is a field that you're serving. It's not a thing. It's not a situation. It doesn't have to look a particular way. You're always in the soup of the collective atmosphere. So wherever you go, whatever you do or don't do, however much you do externally or not, whatever it looks like, whether it's labeled service to others or not, doesn't matter as long as you're constituted internally with that intention to love and share and nourish and support. Because that, from an energetic point of view, the energetics of it, they don't see your situation even. They don't see what room you're in, what office you're in, who you're working with or not. It doesn't matter. It's like one electromagnetic soup of energy. So wherever you go, whatever you do, whatever it looks like, if you're in the energy state of the intention, you're connected to the intention to be available, to be of service. That is service to others. So you got to trust that and let go of the service level discernment and judgments of like, am I being of service? Am I not? Even asking that question is being of service. Unless you let it become an all-consuming, confused state where you're just like, then it's no longer serving you or them. But if it's a genuine question, like, am I of service right now? Could I be more of service? Should I change something? Like, that's a beautiful intention, you see? That's coming from, essentially, from love. And so you are being of service energetically, and that's primary. When you have faith in that, and you emphasize that you're already of service, and you're looking for ways to energetically feel even more loving and available, and taking opportunities in physical life also to be of service as a natural extension, wherever you're at, doesn't matter. You may find that your job might change over time. It may reorient itself because your higher self will co-create with you a pattern of living, a lifestyle that will be most conducive, like a conductor. It will make your physical life a better conductor of the intention that you already have. So if you amplify the intention of service to others, there's no way that your life will not become more reflective of that and bring into your experience greater opportunities to capitalize on that intention to be of service even more. Does that make sense? Does that feel good?
It does. I'm not sure. Yes, it does. And
Yes.
maybe there's something about where it feels like the main focus is on being peaceful. Just being peaceful. And maybe that's enough.
Are you saying that is one of your predominant focuses at this moment? Okay.
Yes, it feels that way.
And you're having thoughts about that or questions about that? If that is of service?
Yeah, if that is enough.
Okay, well, let me ask you, where does this focus on peace come from? What is it motivated by? Why do you want to have a focus on peace? I'm not saying it's a bad focus at all, but why do you want it? What is it motivated by?
It's a good question.
Are you avoiding taking a certain action in your life that would be more exciting to you, that would reshape your life in a way that you know this would be more conductive to why I am here and what I want to be and become and share? But I'm resisting it, I'm fearing it a little bit. So I'm staying in the situation that I'm in, and I'm just going to focus on being peaceful. That can be one motivation. Another could be just because you really love peace and you know its value, and no matter where you go, you're not resisting anything, you're not holding on to anything, but you're just living peacefully because you know that's the ultimate radiance. Those are two different motivations, you see. One is personal, based in fear, can lead to complacency, can make you wonder, am I of service or not? And the other is just because it makes sense to be at peace wherever you go to the best of your ability. And you know that that is of service. Could be a little bit of both too.
I think I have both.
Nice. So, would you like to set your life ablaze with the fire of peace instead of the complacency of peace?
Yes, because that's the other question that was coming up is this how to be fierce and
Nice. Well, you know that perfectly, otherwise you wouldn't have the question. So it's already burning within you. You're just holding back. So all you need to do, you don't need to cultivate that so much. What I would do if I were you is I would ask myself, what am I afraid will happen if I let go and become fiercely peaceful? What am I most afraid would happen? Why am I holding that back? Why am I putting that, why am I putting a lid on that? Because you clearly desire it, because it's clearly part of your nature and blueprint, and you want it. You desire it. It's calling forth from you an awareness that this is what you want. So what is the contradicting lack belief?
You know the Game of Thrones?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the character Daenerys,
Yes.
the dragon lady? That in the end, like the way they
Are you going to
portrayed her.
spoil the end for everyone? I know the ending. And the ending, honestly, the ending is bad writing. And it's very unlike, it's a hijacked ending. It's not a good ending. And it's not, in my view, if she were an actual person, vibrationally, as she was for most of the show, the ending did not compute with who she was. So if anything, the writer was channeling the fear that you have, which a lot of people have, and the agenda that the negative forces have, which is fear being powerful. You got to fear being fierce, fear stepping into your purpose. So in that sense, it was a gift to the collective, but it wasn't logical, and it's not what would have most probably naturally occurred to that character, to someone like that in the end. So what you're fearing is propaganda to keep you disempowered. That would never happen. You would make sure that it would never happen. You don't need to fear yourself. You don't need to fear your power to be in control of your destiny and how you express your power. In fact, if you fear your power, you can never control your power. It controls you. And then it's open to influences and lack beliefs. So just like with a negative thought that you want to acknowledge it, own it, accept it, and then transmute it, similarly, with the power that's genuine inside of you, you also want to acknowledge it, own it, accept it, and then you can work with it. Whatever you own and accept is under your control. So you don't have to fear that. It's the fear that makes you lose control. It's not the energy. It's not the fierceness. Are there going to be some little mistakes that you make along the way where you're a little bit too much in an inappropriate situation? Maybe. Maybe. There's a learning process. There's a refining that happens, a fine-tuning. But that's not the end of the world. And that is part of the journey, and that is understood at the higher levels as being part of the journey. And it's totally acceptable. As long as you're committed to not infringe upon anyone's free will, as long as you can discern that clearly and become very sensitive to that in a loving way, not in a doubtful way, but just clearly discern, is this expression of power right now appropriate? Is it of service to those that are here, that are witnessing this? Or is it not appropriate? Does it not feel aligned? As long as you have that, as long as you respect the free will of others, you're free to be as powerful as you wish, as you dare to.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my question.
Pleasure. Very good. Thanks so much. And thank you, everyone, for your attention again. These are long-form sessions. We go through a lot of little journeys and insights. So I understand if sometimes at the end of a session, your head's spinning a little bit. But why not spin a little bit? Trust that it will all integrate. And as always, I recommend you watch these sessions at least twice, because it makes a big difference whether you watch it once or twice. Good stuff. Progression. So much love for all of you and your journeys and your intentions and your beautiful sacrifices. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this Bentinho live session. Bentinho now hosts these transformative live sessions completely free, offering profound insights and guidance to support your journey. To attend the next live session with Bentinho, simply visit Massaro University and follow the instructions to create your free account.